Hey everybody, this is Dr. K from Camp Bring It On and COCA. Welcome to, I think, our fourth medical town hall. We're going to get started so we can respect people's time. If you're just signing in, if you haven't already done so, please turn your video on and put your name on your video so that we know who is joining us. We just thought we would start with a little bit of a check-in again, kind of see where people are and things that are on their minds, stuff that you want to talk about. We want this to be a participant-driven town hall, so if you have a topic you want to cover or just an issue you're struggling with, this is the place to bring it up. So I'll open it up to anyone that wants to start with something that they're thinking about or just wanted to talk about.
Hi, this is MJ from Camp Happy Days. So we just made the decision, I think we announced officially last week, that we're going to be doing our Camp in a Box during our traditional week of camp. But we also do our year-round programs. And so I was wondering if any other camps had some insight as to where they're looking for, I guess, how they're making decisions as to when they can start looking at planning fall programs, assuming that your summer has kind of been put to a halt or redefined.
This is Dr. Mike from Camp COCA-I. I can tell you that we are looking at a situation where the number of active infections in our service area is pretty much zero, where we have sufficient testing to document that that really is the case and it's not popping back while we're not noticing, and that we have in place sufficient personnel in our public health arena to do contact tracing so that we are confident that if something starts to pop back, it can be controlled. And I have no idea whether we're going to be able to reach those benchmarks in time for our fall weekend programs or not, but that's kind of what we're looking at.
Mike, how big is your service area, if I might ask? What does it encompass?
It's pretty big. The northern half of the state of California, essentially, so a population of something near 20 million spread out over a large service area. The obvious concentrations of population are the San Francisco Bay Area and the Sacramento area.
Anyone else made that decision yet or come up with some criteria that will help you make that decision? I will say for us at Camp Bring It On, we have not gotten to that point yet. We just were given permission to even consider having a fall program and haven't jumped the next step to think about what would be the criteria to determine when we should have it or if it's a good idea at all. So we have not made those choices yet or made that list of criteria yet here.
And I have to say that you know, there may be other things that will get added. That's sort of our baseline criteria for even considering having the fall programs. We would be delighted if there was also a vaccine available at that time. Yeah. Seems much less likely. We did get some encouraging news today about a possible treatment option, which would also make it a little bit easier. But even if we meet those criteria, there may be other things that we feel that we need to take into account that would still lead us to hold off.
Other folks or things that you're thinking about when you're making this decision you want to bring up if it feels like it should be a concern or other people are wondering? Mike, would you do me a favor and type the list of criteria that you're using in the chat box so people can have that, please? That sounds
sure.
Like a good list. At least a good jumping off point. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Tammy from Camp Fantastic. I think we're pretty much in the same boat as what Dr. Mike just talked about. We're not making any decisions. We've put everything off until September 1st, just because we needed to not crush everybody as it was, just, you know, sending all of the things saying that our summer programming is gone was hard enough. We wanted to give people some hope. But given that it's going to all depend on what information is coming out about, you know, how the disease looks like it's spreading around the country, what the incidence is still, if there's any new things that are coming up. We're getting new things every day. Now there's things out of Boston or out of England talking about some rare pediatric problems that we've not seen in the past with COVID. So, you know, it's just evolving so frequently that I think we're not willing to make those kinds of decisions, but it will require quite a few negatives in order of things being gone. And the only positive is having really good testing and having potential for a vaccine that's not going to be here for another year at least. Those are going to be some of our decision points.
Okay. I think some of the things that, at least something that's occurred to me, is I'll be curious to see what happens now if they start opening up, or as they start opening up states as well. You know, do we get another spike again? How much of a spike? And how does that play into all of these decisions too? So should be an interesting next few weeks, as it has been the whole summer, but our whole time. But I think this will be to see what happens as people get back into the community again. Let's see, we have a question from the chat room. Are any of you having staff think we can ease up on canceling because states are opening up services? Anyone sort of going, oh, maybe we pulled the trigger too soon on canceling, or having regrets as far as those decisions go?
At this point, it seems like states opening things up too soon would have the opposite effect. Instead of making me think we should go ahead with camp, it would make me think we're going to be in trouble in a couple of weeks and we're going to have to hold off even longer.
Our non-medical staff have been the one questioning it.
Sure. What have you said so far? What kind of conversations are you having about it?
I couldn't hear that.
What have you been talking about with them, or kind of what things are you saying when they're bringing up this question?
We just go back to the uncertainty and the not knowing about the virus, and that just with looking at what the CDC and that those guidelines are coming out and just saying, you know, the states may be opening up services, but we don't know how that's going to go and if there's going to be the rebound. But it was a question amongst our staff when our state started opening up. It's like, hey, maybe we can still have camp. And it's like, no, we'll go with our virtual plans.
Right. Anyone else having staff raise this question, or even personally thinking, hey, maybe I should have waited? Or Matt, if I see you nodding because you haven't decided yet.
We technically haven't announced yet that we're moving to a virtual program. We've decided that we are, but we just haven't told the staff yet, because we were also hoping to use some of what the ACA CDC comes up with as, you know, just more information to provide to the staff. But I am starting to get some calls saying, because, you know, New Jersey has been hit so hard, but they've decided for some, you know, god awful reason that they're going to open up all the state parks and the county parks and golf courses this weekend, which I don't understand. So I think, you know, having all that information from the CDC, ACA, and then all the horrible things that are about to happen once they open up these parks in our neighborhoods this weekend, you know, that'll just help us confirm with the staff that it was the best idea that we could come up with. Because that's really kind of the pushback that I'm getting right now, that, well, you're so late in August, can you wait longer? And in reality, we can't. You know, program wise, I could plan camp in a month, but medically based, we really, you know, we're already a month behind because we've waited.
Right. Okay.
So this is Susie from
Yeah.
Camp One Step. We actually just made our announcement at 2 o'clock today that we were transitioning our 3 summer camp programs to virtual. We had told our program leaders for our summer camp programs and our sibling camp programs last week, and we've had a lot of positive support for the decision. I had actually somebody reach out to say, I didn't think I'd be as sad. I knew you were going to tell us this. I didn't think I'd be as sad, but I actually think I would have been mad had you told me we were proceeding. So, you know, right now we're dealing with the crying kids at home, you know, and the parents telling us that they've got, you know, 3 kids, the siblings and the child with cancer, that are all in tears at home. But, you know, that's the grief process, and we expect that over time we'll see that improve. We are offering some support services to our families. We have a town hall on Monday night, and then a supportive session for our parents on Wednesday night. And then we also launched kind of a resource and support webpage on our website that has a lot of things about gratitude, resilience, some mindfulness and meditation for not only the parents, the campers, as well as the family, and then also for our volunteers. So we'll see how all those go over. And we're, from a fall perspective, our medical advisory committee, we don't plan to reconvene until probably early June to start talking again about our fall programs.
Sure. Okay. What kind of things are on your resources for the resiliency and some of that?
So it's just a lot of things. We actually tried to find as many freebies as we could because we knew that families couldn't necessarily afford a lot of extra right now. So as you know, there's a lot of apps and stuff for mindfulness and meditation that are available free right now. There's some free yogas for both kids and adults. So we have links to those things, as well as we just have links to like gratitude scavenger hunts for the family or for the kids. We've got a journal that the adolescent can download for just a week at a glance gratitude. We also tagged into a page that has just for the adolescents kind of tracking my emotions, and kind of a fun, kind of an attractive page and things like that. So we also did a reading list and then added our staff picks to that for the parents and for the counselors. We had a section on COVID. So it's just a mixture of things.
Okay. That sounds very helpful for you.
Tried to keep it, we didn't want to get into the heavy psych stuff, and just really tried to keep it more positive and things, strategies that would help them hopefully cope through this.
Very nice. Anyone else having staff going through almost a grieving process, or going through it yourself for not getting to do camps or do some of your programs?
I can certainly admit to a little grieving about that, maybe sometimes a lot.
I would say the same, Mike. Part of me is kind of like, something feels like it's missing. We should be planning for something. And I very much think when that week in June hits and we're not at our campsite, it's going to feel really not good.
Yeah.
You know, I was surprised at how much it affected other people that I wouldn't have expected it from. We sent out our notice 2 weeks ago, right the day after we had our last call. And pretty much universally, everyone said, we are so sad for the kids, but we are so glad that you made this decision. It's the right decision to make. But what really surprised me was I sent out letters to all of our contacts, like at Central Supply in the hospital and medical records in the hospital. And they were the ones that, you know, I thought they'll say, okay, well, we'll talk to you next year. They wrote some of the most meaningful letters back to me, just saying, you know, we're here for you. We know how much this means to you, and it means a lot to us. And we're so sad that this is going on. But again, you made the right decision, and let us know what we can do to help in any way. And they all brought up the idea, can you do something virtual? Can you do that? It's like, yes, we've got that going. So it's really nice to see how much it affects the bigger community than we even recognize.
Yeah.
So this is Susie again from Camp One Step. I think everybody's right now kind of going through that grieving process. I probably have had a little bit more time to do it just in being involved in the decision making. But I think the biggest issue is our medical team is really concerned about where they fit into a virtual program. And so we're going to have a brainstorming session. I got to pick a date, but sometime either this weekend or early next week to really kind of throw out some ideas. I actually did say something on Facebook today to one of the kids that come visit us in the virtual med office. No pokes, no exams, just lots of fun. So I think we're going to have some virtual med office hours, but we don't quite know what that looks like yet.
I think that's a great idea because we've been struggling with that same thing. We don't really have a medical role to play if everybody's sitting at home in their own house. But if we can do something to engage our medical staff so they still feel connected and give the kids the opportunity to still have that contact with some of the medical providers that they're used to seeing in the camp setting, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, so we should brainstorm some ideas. I think the other thing we had talked about, not that I want this to be their sole role, but we definitely know that there's kids that are going to need a little bit more one-on-one in the virtual role. And, possibly could we provide some one-on-one to some of those kids as well. But I think we are going to get them engaged in some of the activities. And then I don't know if we'll challenge and do something in the more when we do the all camp kind of things, if we'll do some songs or some skits or something. But we're going to put our creative heads together and try to come up with some ideas. So I will share those as we come up with them.
That's awesome, Susie. My medical director has already, she's very excited about the potential to participate. So she reached out to all of our medical staff to give them really the heads up first that you were going virtual. And they've already started a video for the kids. So it'll be like an intro to their, they won't tell me exactly what they're calling the med shed during our virtual time until I get to preview the video because I'm the one who has to post it. But they're going to create a video and they're going to run one of our social activities. So whether it's Pictionary or bingo, our medical staff are going to just take that entire event for the day as just a way of, staying connected and doing.
That sounds good. We'll have to put that on our topic for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So there was a question in there, Susie, that maybe you can think about or potentially answer, or anyone obviously can answer as well. The question is, for the medical office hours, would staff play virtual games with the kids or an opportunity to ask the staff questions? And they're also complimenting that the idea is awesome.
Sure. So, again, it was my brainstorm today as I was writing a post on social media. So I kind of committed ourselves to it. And then I thought, oh, that's a pretty good idea. So I don't know that we've defined that yet. I actually thought we could play some games and maybe it's a separate time period from the other activities so they're not missing out on that. Or, sometimes the kids just like to get in there and tell jokes or, you can do Mad Libs. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff we could potentially do. So I don't know that we've defined it 100%. I think that it's wide open.
It's awesome.
One thing that occurs to me that might work, at least for part of the time, with Zoom, you can have all these different breakout rooms available. So if you had a time when kids were choosing different activities, that one of them could be, just like at camp, if they were getting tired and wanted to rest for a little while, they could go stop in at the med shed and hang out with the med staff. So I think, the more I think about this, the more interesting options I think there might be.
Well, we definitely know there's those kids that like to be in the medical office. So, right?
Oh, yeah.
And actually, we've had one since we posted. I think she's asked us a million times what she's going to get in her box that arrives in the mail. So, we're trying to kind of disengage that for right now. The other thing that we're going to do that we actually started it at summer camp last year. So recognizing that, a number of kids have sometimes some difficulty staying on task and focused and fidget and stuff. So we actually started we had some sensory bags that we had put together last year, and those were kind of checked out to kids with all sorts of things in it. So I think there's going to be a number of kids that Zoom, or a fair number of kids that Zoom may not be the way to go. And so we're going to try to reach out to families to see if they want to kind of opt into a sensory kit. And then we'll send those kinds of things out, the fidget toys and the little wands that they can turn and things that they can play with and stuff. So that's one of our other thoughts that we need to explore a little bit more.
Other things that people are thinking about, or ways you're going to incorporate your medical staff with the virtual camps? Just looking at the chat room. So, okay. All right. Any other topics, questions people want to throw out to bring up or to talk about with this group?
I'm going to just bring up one more thing. So one of the things that, we sometimes struggle a little bit with is getting the kids on treatment to our programs just because of the intensive protocols. And, I think sometimes they're not comfortable going on treatment, either they or their parents or whatever. So we get our share, but we don't get as many. They usually come after treatment is over. So we've really been reaching out to our healthcare teams in the hospital to potentially look at virtual as a great way to engage the kids that are laying in the hospital bed during their treatment, or the kids that maybe they or their parents are just a little apprehensive about staying overnight for a whole week or something like that. And so we're hoping to be able to kind of engage some new kids that might not have thought about camp quite yet, and then kind of give them a head start into potentially next year.
Okay. Is anyone else going to do that with all this great virtual material that you're creating for this year? Or
Yeah. Sorry, MJ from Camp Happy Days again. That's something that we've really been able to create that connection with some of our med shed, because they do come from MUSC, which is based in Charleston, is telling them that, the kids in the hospital at that time will be getting boxes as long as they sign off on it. And that's also going to be a chance for those who would typically be at the med shed. And so they also just reopened a new children's hospital. So they've got so many things going on right now. And so maybe it's a breath of fresh air to know that, camp has kind of been lifted, that burden off their shoulders. It's poor phrasing, I apologize, but I think there's some truth to it. And so to know that we are able to give them that box, and those nurses and those volunteers in that hospital at the time can also participate with those kids, because I think, as we've all kind of seen, medical is such a big key role in this, and it's also seeing the kids outside the hospitals. And so even if we're forcing camp into the hospital now. And so our doctors are very on board with it, and people are very excited. So I think, I believe that was Susie speaking before me, that brings up the good point that we're really going to be able to engage more with our local community with it.
And this is Ian from Camp Happy Days too. One thing that we're also doing is going to have some boxes specifically for the medical staff. So they're going to get some of the fun stuff with the kids. So like the excitement is going to be both ways. Like the kids are going to be excited to see what the medical staff is getting, and vice versa. And so I think that's going to be really, a cool way to incorporate everyone. We really don't want anyone to feel left out. We want to invite as many people in, and we're using this as an opportunity to expand our reach.
This is Susie again. Have you decided what you're going to put in the boxes? I think it's a great idea.
We have not yet, at least nothing has been confirmed yet. I know that something in our boxes our medical nurse is super excited about is we'll do pre-postage stamps to their nurses. And so we're spread out between 3 major hospitals in South Carolina, so Greenville, Columbia, and Charleston. And so if we send a pre-stamped and addressed envelope, those kids, one of their activities will be to send, a thank you or just a letter to the nurses from their hospital.
We're potentially going to use we know that there's some volunteers who may not be as engaged in the virtual. So we were going to look to them for possibly getting involved in doing some snail mail postcards to the campers. But I think that's nice to look at the other way. We actually cover about 12 to 14 hospitals between Illinois and Wisconsin. And so it's pretty large.
Dawn just posted a reminder in the chat room that in May there will be 2 to 3 town halls that are about Camp in a Box. So keep an eye out for that schedule and be sure you participate in those. I like the idea of sending something to the medical staff as well to help them stay engaged in the camp concept too.
We got one with your name on it, Dr. K. Don't you worry.
Thank you.
This is Dr. Mike at Okaizu. I had one other question. Somebody, I think, Susie, it might have been you, brought up the issue of the virtual platform being sort of more conducive for some kids than others. And even in the regular camp setting, one of the things that we always try to impress on our counselors is to look out for the kid who isn't as fully engaged and kind of make sure that somebody's going and checking in with people. And it seems to me that that will be much harder to do in a virtual setting. And so I'd be really interested in what ideas other people have for both how you kind of keep in touch with each individual child to make sure that they're engaged and having fun and not troubled by something. And if you discover something in that setting, what do you do about it?
This is Susie again. I think we're still kind of having those discussions, but I think we recognize the same thing, and we're trying to look at what we might incorporate into some of our orientation or education for staff along those lines, because I think it brings up a whole another issue. And again, that was where one of the areas was, could medical play a role in providing some of that more one-on-one time with people that kids might need. Not that we need to assume that all the time, but that might be a good role for some people.
Dr. Mike, I think another thing that might be beneficial would be to possibly, reach out to, and we've never even thought about, well, I haven't thought about that, MJ probably has, but something to think about would be to reach out to some of our volunteers that are teachers and see if they've seen that going on with the virtual learning in the classroom in ways that they might have found it effective to kind of handle that in the classroom setting too. I think that might be a way to look at it.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, because there are a whole bunch of people getting a whole lot of experience in that right now in the school setting.
We did a virtual day camp 2 weeks ago. It was supposed to be in Chicago for 3 daytime hours, and it was for 5 to 10-year-olds. We were actually really surprised at how engaged the kids were. I mean, some of these 5-year-olds were whipping around on Zoom like nobody's business. They were putting their own little like emoji characters up at the beginning of the day. They were switching them each day. I was like, I don't even know how to do that. So it was really quite impressive. I mean, there were a few kids that were on treatment, and obviously they needed to periodically check in and check out depending on what was going on for them. But we had about 20, I think we had 22 5 to 10-year-olds, and I think we were all very surprised at how astute they were and engaged they were with the activities, and how well the breakout rooms worked for some of the small group activities that they did. They actually had a dance party that we got videotaped. I think it made social media, but it was quite cute watching these kids have their in-home dance parties. And they also were able to engage their siblings with some of it too. So that was kind of neat to watch, and they were excited about that.
That's great. That's exactly the kind of thing I'd love to see work. We did a bereaved teen session actually that went much more easily than I expected it to as well. I ascribed part of that to the fact that most of them really knew each other very well, had known each other for a lot of years, and we do a lot of specific programming just for that group. But they were very comfortable with the technology and seemed much more relaxed in that context than I had anticipated they might be.
I suspect if I tried to run one of those that I would be the hang up, because I'm probably not anywhere as close to tech savvy as the kids participating would be.
Well, the person who did the Chicago day camp and led it was freaked out by doing virtual, and she was a school teacher, but she's not currently teaching. She actually picked it up really quick, and she was putting people into small group rooms and was muting people, and she actually did a really nice job, but she realized, and she was able to share that with the program leaders for summer camp, that even if you're really apprehensive about it, it's really not quite as bad as you truly think it's going to be. So
Good to know.
One of the things that we're still trying to get our arms around with our planning committee is they brought up they still want to do our memorial service. And I mean, you know, we can come up, we have lots of ideas for fun activities, and we've had, you know, in terms of getting that one-on-one, we're looking at breaking into cabin chat along our cabin lines and training our staff about that. But I will tell you, I'm struggling with the idea of our memorial service and how do we make sure that kids are okay, and also who else is going to be in the room seeing that. I mean, ours is an optional kind of opt-in kind of thing, but I don't know if anybody else has talked about that kind of a thing. I know with Dr. Mike, you talking about your bereaved group.
You know, we've been thinking about that a lot. You know, we have parent support, peer support discussion groups at our family camps, and we have sibling peer support discussion groups at our SIBS camps, and we have the bereavement programs as well. And I worry about exactly those same things. So, you know, there's something about being in a room with everybody and feeling safe, and you can look around the room and see people's facial expression and body language and see the tears starting to form in the corner of their eye, and then you know that that's either somebody that, you know, maybe the second facilitator steps out on the porch with for a little while right in that moment, or somebody that you're going to check in with in the afternoon. And it's really hard for me to imagine how to do that when all you've got are these little faces on a computer screen. So I can commiserate, but I don't know the answer to that question. It makes me nervous about doing that kind of thing where we're going to be bringing up, we know, some difficult emotions that people are going to be processing.
And I think the other point too on that, Deb, is that you don't know if the child is home by themselves. So you've got a teenager now that you know, they're in this now grieving period, and they're home, the meeting, the part, it ends, and then they're home by themselves with nobody to provide them some support. And so that may be something I think that you might want to bring up as well. I mean, what Dr. Mike said, as well as just, you're going to turn that off and they're going to be home alone potentially.
So we've kind of talked a little bit about that. We do a different ceremony with that. It's the ribbon ceremony. And so they kind of write a wish or a letter to someone, and it floats in the wind and all that. So the way that we're approaching that, so maybe you can kind of take from it, is we're going to provide a video for those kids at the beginning of what the message is. And also, we're looking at this as an opportunity for our kids to show their parents what camp is. And they, you know, like you said, someone brought up the good point of they may be home alone, but we're going to have those pre-recorded videos. And when we do our ribbon ceremony, typically it is in a all camp setting, but we right now are pivoting towards the idea of doing our cabin chat breakout rooms. And so in that case, these kids can have their support that they've had all week to write those on their ribbons and stuff. So it's kind of smaller areas, and hopefully with those counselors that they know so well. And a lot of our counselors have been doing this for, you know, the past few summers to know that, and kind of going through that training of knowing to, you know, unfortunately, it's probably going to look like a, you know, a private message through Zoom or something, but we're hoping with a smaller group, it's going to be easier to manage, and also really have a better support because it's going to be the group that they've had that whole week.
I definitely agree with that. That's one of the things that we thought of too, that having smaller groups gives you a little bit better ability to keep tabs on the individuals who are participating. And the closer they are to each other, they have other ways of connecting, potentially on social media and email, other things. And they will, at least the teenagers certainly, will take care of each other to a significant extent. So those are definitely good suggestions. The concept still worries me a little, but you know, we gotta figure out some way how to deal with it. And one of the ways is just to soften the messages a bit, I think, as well, and try to keep it a little bit lighter. And then maybe you could have some of these breakout rooms for particular people who were interested in following a particular topic to a greater depth, and there might only be, you know, 2, 3, 4 people there. That would be easier to control. It seems a little bit of a black box when you're done and you switch off your computer, what's their state of mind and who's there to help them out. But smaller groups definitely is a help.
For those of you that are doing the camps like this or doing these sessions, do the parents or families of the kids know what's happening each day in the virtual camp so that they'd be aware that it might be a little more difficult afternoon? Or I'm just curious, we really haven't gotten to this point yet, so.
They will, we're just still working on all of that. And one of the things in our box or bag that we're sending out, we were going to put we'll put a schedule, but also kind of like some do's and don'ts with Zoom etiquette or whatever platform we ultimately decide to use, which I believe is going to be Zoom. Some things may be Facebook Live, but just because we've been on a couple of webinars where they talk about, it may still be like camp where you have a kid acting out that you kind of need to pull aside in a private conversation and still deal with those kinds of things.
Right.
Behavioral things as well as the emotional things. So, but we're still working on all that.
Hi, I'm Tara. I'm new. I'm with Camp Star Trails. Unfortunately, I won't get to see what camp looks like because this would be my first season. But just listening to this, it got me thinking maybe at the end of it, when you do turn off the meeting and it goes dark, if it's for parents or older kids that do have their own email, you can send them emails of reminding them that, you know, there are people here to talk to you, and maybe give them directions of how to connect with you one-on-one if they want to do that. For the kids that are home alone, that is a little bit tougher. Maybe before the meeting ends, put in the group chat, you know, again, we're here for you. We can talk to you if you'd like to set up a one-on-one with me or med staff or child life or whoever. This is how we can do it. So it's just reminding them that, yes, it's not as intimate because we're virtual, but we can still speak to them on one-on-one if it needs to be done, and you could set those meetings up with them. They'd have to do it a little bit more on their own, which is hard and scary, but at least they know that's an option.
Other thoughts or ideas about that? Is there anyone who's not going to do a memorial ceremony or something that you normally would because you're not willing or not sure how to do it over virtual?
We just started talking about this yesterday, my program director and I. We think it was always optional at camp, and primarily, you know, depending, unfortunately, who we were remembering, determined really what the majority of the kids that showed up, you know, the age group. Right now, we're only going to honor an LIT, one of our leaders in training, so our oldest of campers. So what we're tossing around right now is just limiting it to the LITs from last year, since they, you know, obviously were the closest with him, and you know, at his funeral, it was rough on them. So I thought that would be the opportunity, but also then bring in, as you had said, Tara, make sure my social worker and child life are both on in that program that day. So I think we're just really leaning more towards limiting it to that specific group as opposed to leaving it open.
So this is Tammy. I think we're more wussy, but we tend to do it from a more global perspective. So our memorial service that we do is more of we call it a remembrance, and we do a tree planting at camp and say that it's for all of our friends who can't be with us this year. And so the people who know that someone has passed away, it's an emotional time for them, and they know who they're thinking of. but it's also for the kids who have aged out and are now over 18 and not coming back to camp, and kids who've moved away and everything. So we try to do it as a more global honoring the people that aren't with us at that camp. And that then things come up in cabins and we deal with those individually, but we don't really address the specifics of somebody unless we've had a child like that died during the week of camp, not at camp, but then we address the specifics.
I have another question for the group.
Okay.
Oops. It's kind of shifting gears a little bit, but there's been discussion among, we heard it on a couple of the calls that we've been on, but also amongst our team about those graduating campers, and do you let them come back even though they'd be older next summer so that they have their last summer at camp? And so a lot of our team was in favor of doing that, but I was just curious what people thought about that. Because developmentally, well, I guess not that much developmentally, but still it's gonna change kind of the perspectives and the our age group for a year.
We actually just had a conversation about this in our group today. And the decision was made that we were going to allow campers to come back. But I guess I will admit I have a little bit of heartburn about that. Not only do we have people that maybe will have, in theory, a year of college or work or something under their belt, you now technically have adult campers staying in cabins with minors. And what does that bring up? And they're not staff, they're campers, but you're talking 18-year-olds with, so a part of me very much wants to do it because I know how important it is to those campers that are missing yet another graduation. But there is definitely some things that make me a little bit nervous about doing it.
I would definitely echo that. We haven't had that full discussion about bringing them back to camp, but we have talked about doing the possibility of when everything is in the clear, renting the campsite that we do rent and having like a CIT or last year, so 16 and 17-year-olds, having a specific weekend for them to go through and do the things that they would have done before aging out. So we'll do trust walks with them and specific high ropes courses. So not necessarily coming back to camp, but finding another opportunity or a teen weekend for them.
So this is Susie from Camp One Step again. So we were just talking about this the other day. We don't have a defined plan yet, but along that same lines is, we were could we bring them in for the last couple days of camp so they get in on the closing ceremony, or do they come in on that Friday night before we close on Saturday and then they stay through Sunday at the same campground and have their closure within their group? So that was one of our early discussions. Nothing's defined yet. We have a winter camp that they can attend. So of course, we don't really know what the fall and winter is going to look like, right? But at this point in time, if we are able to go that, we'll truly encourage them to attend that.
So we probably one of the only things we may have actually decided on so far. So with our graduates, I keep saying more. So our campers graduate when they are 18. And then we require a year off before they return as LITs. And typically that's a 2-year program. And then our staff starts at age 22. What we decided was that we couldn't bring them back for the simple fact of the size of our camp and that whole idea of, adults in the cabin. But what we decided was that we would count this year as that year off. So this way they can return next year as LITs. Now, the downfall for that, the downsides for that for them is that they're probably going to still have to take a year off, but it'll be after the LIT program because more than likely they won't be 22. And that's not something I'm budging on. You have to be 22 to be on staff. So it's kind of like just basically moving their year off till later, which at that point, hopefully, either they're, either finishing college or in the working world, so that, you know, that responsibility is that much stronger for them. So we're kind of just switching their year off, because I just really can't give them that extra time to come back.
Anyone else thought about this, or issues that are going to come up trying to deal with graduates and providing that experience that they're missing?
This is Dr. Mike with COCA-I again. We've thought about it, not made any decisions yet, but I think from the tenor of the conversations we've had, that we'll probably go in the direction of bringing them back for a weekend program or something by themselves, as opposed to trying to integrate that into the regular summer camp. But like I said, we haven't decided entirely yet.
Hey, this is Kelly with Smile and All. We're going to do the same thing along the same lines as Dr. Mike and MJ are talking about. Hopefully doing something individual, because we had talked about bringing those kids back, but really had a lot of heartburn too, like what Dr. K talked about. And it's just really opens up a whole nother can of worms when you have adult campers who have, you know, totally different experiences in the cabins. So we're doing something very similar to that too.
Okay. All right, well, trying to be respectful of everybody's time. We're kind of coming to the end of the 45 minutes we had slotted for this. Any other questions, thoughts people just want to throw out while we have this group together? I will tell you that there is a poll that we would like to have everyone answer. So I think it's about 5 or 6 questions. So we're going to have, Jennifer's going to launch that so that people can give us some thoughts about how these sessions are going. And we'd love to know if people still want to do this. I think we'd be slated to do another medical town hall in another 2 weeks. I will reach out to one of the infectious disease docs that were on one of the first calls with us to join again. I had intended to do that for this time and totally lost track of the 2 weeks, so my apologies, but would potentially do that for the upcoming call if people are still interested. Jennifer, do you need does the poll go out by email, or how will that get to people to do it?
That it should show up on their screen right now to answer it. If they're, of course, if they're logged in on a computer, I don't know how it works if you're on a phone, but
You can't do the poll if you're on the phone.
yeah, so I'll give it almost everybody has answered. So we've got 80% have voted. So thank you. This really helps us with our future planning. A lot of the things that you guys talked about tonight, we are going to be providing programs and learning in May on a lot of these subjects. So stay tuned for more information that will be getting out to you guys soon. Thank you for voting.
All right.
Thank you for having this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Tara, we see your message. If you can email Don or Jennifer, so they have your email address on file, then we can make sure that you get added. Not a problem.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You got it, Tara.
And remember, I think we've mentioned this, but these sessions do get recorded along with the chat too, so that we can get so people can see the minutes